Good morning and welcome to West Shore Unitarian Universalist Church. My name's Diane Alcorn and I am the Membership and Engagement Coordinator here. If this is your first time visiting with us, welcome. We're glad you took the time to join us here. If you'd like more information about our church and our worship community, please feel free and send me an email. In the meantime, again, welcome. We're so glad you took the time to join us.
Welcome to West Shore Unitarian Universalist Church, a spiritual community whose hope is audacious and whose vision is for a more equitable and just world for all. I am Reverend Anthony McCarr, Senior Minister of this wonderful community, and joining me this morning are Dave Blazer, Music Director, Megan Ross, Director of Religious Education and Engagement, Jeff Modulewski, Worship Associate, Judy Montgomery, Worship and Ministry Associate, and Larry Wise and Michael Hockman, who are our wonderful tech folks this morning making the live stream possible. Together, we are pleased to invite you into this space which is connecting people all over Cleveland and beyond, all over the world. Often the world is not so welcoming as this community. Often the world and its values are neither loving nor just. So may this worship hour be one in which we are fed by a wisdom and a passion that remind us that life does not have to be that way, that there exists in every human heart a larger love that stirs within, that urges us on to what is better. Let this larger love move in our midst today. May each of us, in some way, small or large, be touched and changed by it. A special welcome to you if you are a newcomer to our community, gay or straight, cisgender or transgender, black, brown, or white. You are welcome here. Our West Shore regulars would love to greet you and will do so if you indicate on the Facebook chat that you are new or relatively new. If you happen to have any questions and would like to chat with someone, West Shore's Member and Engagement Coordinator, Diane Alcorn, would love to reach out to you. Diane's email address is being added to your Facebook chat as we speak. We have a couple of announcements now for you from Megan.
Good morning. I have just two things for you today. First, I'd like to give a special thank you to Christine Salante and Dorothy Richards for all of their help in making the Stuffy sleepover possible. Christine helped with taking pictures and moving those stuffies all over the building, and Dorothy was responsible for designing certificates and name tags and also for registering everyone. If you haven't had a chance to see the pictures, they are on our Facebook page. Feel free to take a look. And secondly, just a reminder, our tech guru, Larry Wise, is offering a computer security program this Wednesday at 7 o'clock on Zoom. A link for registration will be added to the chat. You can also find the link to register in your Friday e-news. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. One announcement that I would like to share this morning has to do with a new adult religious education program. It is called Starting Point. Starting Point is a program designed for members who want to dig a little deeper into their UU faith. We will explore our personal journeys, look at our UU faith and history, and explore some opportunities for reaching out and serving needs greater than our own. Although Starting Point will naturally appeal to newer members and those considering membership in West Shore, it will also appeal to folks who may have been around for 5, 10, 20, or even more years, who are ready to dive back into some of the fundamental issues of our UU faith. Starting Point is a 4-session interactive course limited to 12 participants. Pre-registration is required. You can check out this month's Shorelines or your e-news for more information, or contact Membership and Engagement Coordinator Diane Alcorn. A second announcement is to make sure that you know that at the West Shore Board's request, the task force for reopening has regathered. The task force first gathered almost a year ago, but since then, as you well know, much has changed, and there is genuine light at the end of the tunnel. Now, it is busily working on a proposal for how and when we can gather face-to-face in a way that is both inclusive and safe for all involved. The task force includes myself, 2 staff members, both our parish nurses, and 3 congregants, and their charge is to develop a proposal for the board to consider at its April meeting. Please bless this task force with your good thoughts and prayers, and know that they are tackling this incredibly important issue on our behalf. Once again, welcome to this new day. Every week we light our chalice, symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. It is a beautiful reminder that no matter what might have happened over the course of the past week, the gathered community that is West Shore Unitarian Universalist Church is a source of stability we can count on. It is a source of meaning we can all count on. I will now say our chalice lighting words, and then Dorothy and Jeff Richards and Biscuit, their sweet rescue dog, will lead us in lighting the chalice in their home and saying our unison affirmation words. We'd like to feature a different West Shore member or family doing this every Sunday, so if you are interested, please reach out to our worship tech guru, Christine Solante. And now, our chalice lighting words. This is our chalice. In many separate rooms, we light one flame, flame of passion, flame of compassion, flame of humor, flame of style. We do not accept merely surviving. Let our mission be to thrive.
Welcome. Please join us as we light West Shore's traveling chalice. And we say these words. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. El amor es el espíritu de esta iglesia y el servicio su ley.
Nuestro magnífico convenio.
Vivir juntos en paz buscar la verdad en el amor y darnos los unos a los otros.
So may it be. And now we turn to our time of greeting. We greet each other in the midst of all the joys and struggles of our lives, some of which are personal, others of which are public. Today is the first Sunday of March, and with March, we enter into a time of shifting weather, beautiful days like today, but other days won't be. And snow is not done with us yet. I'm not a Cleveland pro yet, but this is what I hear. And yet we can also know spring is coming. Spring is unstoppable. Listen to a poem about this, about March's character and its role in the seasons, as written by Ella Wheeler Wilcox, American author and poet, born November 5th, 1850, and died October 30th, 1919. The poem is entitled March. Like some reformer who with mien austere, neglected dress, and loud, insistent tones, more rasping than the wrongs which she bemoans, walks through the land and wearies all who hear, while yet we know the need of such reform. So comes unlovely March with wind and storm to break the spell of winter and set free the poisoned brooks and crocus beds oppressed, severe of face, gaunt-armed, and wildly dressed. She is not fair nor beautiful to see, but merry April and sweet smiling May come not till March has first prepared the way. That is the poem. We give thanks for the reformer energies of the month of March. And now we turn to a more personal sharing of names and news that people have asked to be shared. First of all, join with me in celebrating the March birthdays of the following senior members of our congregation: Ken Rasmussen, Marshall Peterson, Bruce R., Mary Jane Hansen, and Soren Hansen. Happy birthday to all of you. In this time, we are also acknowledging some sad news. It is with much sadness that we announce the death of longtime member Erica Polisi, who passed away at Kendall on March 4th. Notes and cards can be sent to her daughter Anne at the address given in this past Friday's e-news. Our condolences also go to Anne Obradovich, whose sister Dorothy Teresko passed away this week, and would appreciate cards. And again, you can send those to the address given in this past Friday's e-newsletter. Finally, Marilyn Wesky writes, I want to express my deep gratitude for the outpouring of love that came from you at this time of my husband, Paul Youngberg's passing. He loved this church and the people in it, and I thank you for your great kindness during this difficult time. That is what Marilyn Wesky says. Marilyn, we love you. So sorry for this difficult time. Let us now say the names of people whom we are holding in our personal thoughts and prayers this morning, people in our community and perhaps beyond, wherever you happen to be. Say into the space of your room these names. Say them out loud. You may even type the name into West Shore's Facebook chat if you like. I'll pause for a moment as we do this. This has been our greeting time when we are called out of our regular 24/7 world into a time of nurturance and peace and kindness. And it is also a time of spiritual adventure and exploration. Today's service is part of our year-long worship series devoted to the great world's religious traditions that nourish and inform Unitarian Universalism. And one of the rituals that we have been living into is a signature sound. The signature sound of our spiritual adventure is the tune Heiferdal, better known as the tune of Blue Boat Home. But as you know, different hymns can use the same tune, so now we turn to our first hymn of the day, Light of Ages, End of Nations.
Good morning. My name is Jeff Modzelewski, and I'm proud to be a member of the Worship Associates team. For me, understanding the Hebrew Scriptures and Judaism has had a significant impact on my understanding of faith, justice, and even Unitarian Universalism. The lessons in these scriptures paint a picture for me on the structures of society, the place that religion and government should hold in our communities, and what the people can do when things go wrong. Thousands of years after these pages were written, we can still draw so much inspiration and direction from what they say. They serve as guides, lessons, and calls to action. It's hard to point to any single chapter or verse that's impacted me without really putting it in the context of others, but Micah 6:8 really is a great starting point. He has shown you, O man, what is good and what the Lord requires of you, to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. What can be more you than a simple verse calling for everyone to fight for what's right, to help each other, and to humbly follow our own spiritual path? For me, it was a wonderful conversation starter when talking about the importance of justice work as well. Why do churches spend so much time on the humbly walk with God part and so little time on the do justice part, when do justice was the first one that was listed? Now, it can be hard sometimes to see how stories written so many years ago can relate to our lives today. But when you look a little deeper, you see these stories of people who are not all that different from you and me. People have to take on big challenges, but don't feel up to the task. People who just want to protect their families and their communities. People who want to do the right thing, but may not always be sure what that is. And we see stories of greed and corruption of leaders that unfortunately often mirrors the world that we live in today in some very uncomfortable ways. When you take a close look at how Nehemiah can teach us how to organize to fight for injustice, Isaiah can teach us who the leaders in our community should be working for, and that all the wealth that we have isn't ours individually, but a collective bounty that should be shared by all. And Song of Songs can teach us about love. Psalms can teach us about the importance of music, beauty, and art. The UU Church gives the opportunity to draw inspiration and learn from so many different sources. And in many ways, Judaism and the Hebrew Scriptures have been a source that has watered many other faiths throughout the years, and it's still a fountain that we can learn from today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. This is Jeff's last reflection as a worship associate, and we have been grateful for his stories and for his wisdom. Jeff will be shifting his focus to serve on the newly established Justice Visioning Task Force, together with Joan Clark, Warren Campbell Gaston, Amy Dillon Cody, Kathy Ross, and Silk Knudsen. As our Justice Visioning Task Force, they will develop a congregationally based and congregationally approved vision of where West Shore's justice program could be 5 years into our future, more years too into our future, together with an effective strategy for getting us there. Again, thank you, Jeff. Bless you in your new service role at West Shore. And now, we turn to today's call to the offering, which is a testimonial from West Shore member Judy Montgomery.
Thank you. Good morning, West Shore. Though I'm usually here as a worship associate, today I have a little bit different hat. In 2014, when I joined West Shore, I was overwhelmed by all the groups there were, all the ways to be involved here at West Shore, and I joined a whole bunch of them. But eventually I found that I really liked being an office volunteer and a volunteer at the welcome table. I also joined several of the justice groups. Then in 2018, I became part of the ministerial search committee, who eventually brought Reverend Anthony here. And I found that year how so much I love West Shore, and I knew that after that commitment was over, I wanted to be very involved in West Shore. And then I was invited to become a worship associate. And I was honored but terrified. The idea of standing up here every month or 6 weeks and spilling my guts out here scared me to death. And so that's why I said yes, to challenge myself, to grow spiritually, and I have. I've appreciated so many opportunities here at West Shore. I think it was in 2014, there was the Beloved Conversations program, and that is really where my racial justice journey began, and I grew. And then over the years, there have been various book studies, and right now I'm involved in the Me and White Supremacy book study with a group of 6 women, and I'm growing. I've been involved with several of the, or both of the project check-ins, and during this last one, I was so touched to find out that there were 35 West Shore people who really would appreciate a Christmas Day call, and I helped to make that happen. It touches me. And then there were the Pen Pal programs. I think it was last summer when I was assigned 2-year-old Elliot Martin. 2 years old. What was I going to do with that? Well, it unfolded, and his mother, Amanda, and I started sending notes back and forth, and she and Hal would tell me how they talked about those cards, and he was so excited. He really began to understand who Judy was. And then we met in the parks a couple of times. Yesterday, most recently, we fed the birds together in Brecksville, and that was great fun. And you know, I've become a kind of a grandma. That touches me. And now, I have joined the Ministry Associates team. I'm very honored to be part of that group, and we will represent you as we endeavor to help keep West Shore the very strong institution it already is. The intention of our new organizational structure is to give you more of a voice in decision-making and to be a source of information for you and for groups here at West Shore. How do we afford all of this? Well, the main source of income for West Shore is our pledging. And pledging helps me to feel a part of it. A couple years ago, when money was being raised for the electronic sign outside, I intended to donate, I really did, and I just never got around to it. And so now, when I drive by West Shore and I see that sign sitting out there, I think, and I didn't help to put that up. So not only am I going to give a pledge again this year, but I have already increased it 15%, and I hope some of you will join me in that. The other project, there are two other projects, special donations, and the one that takes my heart is the organ refurbishment project, because I so enjoy when David plays the Holt Camp organ. Don't miss the postlude today. I love the way that organ vibrates my whole body, just really touches me. So I know many of you are already planning to pledge, so to those of you who are hesitating for some reason, please know that pledges of any size are needed and welcome. Pledging reminds me that I am connected and committed to my spiritual community of West Shore.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you so much for your wonderful words. Thank you. As Judy said, pledging is a way for people to express their sense of connection and commitment to this, their spiritual home, their chosen spiritual home. Your pledge will make all the difference in enabling West Shore to be the vibrant, loving, impactful community that we all want it to be in this next program year, starting August 1st, 2021, and ending June 30th, 2022. Our connected and committed pledge goals include achieving a total pledge amount of $600,000 so that our conservative church budget balances. Each household considers increasing their pledge by at least 10 to 15%, as I have done and Judy is doing. 20 members or friends who have never pledged before or who have not pledged recently, that they consider pledging this year. And that we all step up together, that everyone participates in our pledge drive. This spiritual community is a lifeline for so many of us. Our need to social distance has only proved the point. Let's keep this community strong with our love and our giving. Your pledge indeed makes all the difference. Thank you. And now, if you'd like to offer West Shore a special financial gift, please follow the text instructions on your screen. Yet another blessing of this community is the healing power of music. We are blessed to be able to hear it every week. George Gershwin was born Yakub Gershowitz, son of Russian Jewish immigrants. His 3 preludes for piano are well-known examples of early 20th century American classical music as influenced by jazz. This is Prelude Number 2 by George Gershwin. That is our beautiful Dave Blazer. Thank you. And now we enter into a time of meditation and prayer. And so I invite you to allow yourself to be in this moment. And I invite you to take a big, deep breath in. And let that breath all the way out. And when you let that breath out, let all of the tension, all of the worries out with that breath. Another deep in-breath. Oh, and let all the tension out. Just let it drain away. I invite you to close your eyes if you wish. And follow my voice. And I want to share with you another poem that Ella Wheeler Wilcox wrote about March. And this one is entitled March Snow. It goes like this. Let the old snow be covered with the new, the trampled snow, so soiled and stained and sodden. Let it be hidden wholly from our view by pure white flakes, all trackless and untrodden. When winter dies, low at the sweet spring's feet, let him be mantled in a clean sheet. Let the old life be covered by the new, the old past life, so full of sad mistakes. Let it be wholly hidden from the view by deeds as beautiful and silent as snowflakes. And that is most of the poem. And what images from it are speaking to you right now? Let the old snow be covered with the new, the trampled snow so soiled and stained and sodden. Take these images with you, reflect on them as we now enter into the wise silence. And now, please consider this video.
Judaism is the ancient religion of the Jewish people, a 3,000-year-old tradition that traces its roots back to the patriarch Abraham. So it is really the cornerstone religion for the Abrahamic traditions of Christianity and Islam. Although the global Jewish population is relatively small at 14 million, the impact of Judaism on world civilization is profound and significant. They self-identify with one of four different schools of thought: Orthodox, Conservative, Reform, or Reconstructionist. But there is tremendous diversity of thought and opinion within each of those schools. The holiest text for Jews is the Hebrew Bible, or the Tanakh, and there's great emphasis from the tradition placed on the first 5 books of the Tanakh, which is called the Torah. In the Tanakh, we see the introduction of a strictly monotheistic God, the same God that Christians and Muslims worship. And the Tanakh also outlines a very significant aspect of Judaism for the Jewish people, and that's the covenant that the Jewish people have with God, which holds for the Jewish people a certain set of responsibilities around moral and social and political obligation. And the covenant really gives birth to a whole body of Jewish law, as exemplified by the 10 Commandments, which provides an ethical foundation, really, for Western civilization. Some of the common traditions for Jews around the world include circumcision of male children. That is part of the covenant that goes all the way back to the roots of Judaism. And also life rituals, such as bar mitzvahs or bat mitzvahs, which really signify the coming to age of a young Jewish boy or girl as they enter into adulthood. Because Jews have wrestled so deeply with ideas of theology and philosophy, with law and ethics, and with the fundamental problem of human suffering, There's a rich intellectual tradition within Judaism of interpretation and debate that's built right into the heart of the tradition. So even though the sacred texts remain unchanged over time, the interpretation does change based on time and place and the interpreter. So in that way, it's a very dynamic tradition that also changes over time.
So we are in the 6th month of our year-long sermon series about the world's religions. As Unitarian Universalists, our religious faith compels us to go in search of truth wherever truth may be found. And so we have gone to Hinduism, to Buddhism, to Confucianism, to Taoism, to Islam, and now this morning to Judaism. Start with Judaism's two major scriptures. The first is often called the Old Testament, but that is incorrect, and in fact, it is insulting from a Jewish perspective. There is nothing old or archaic about it. The better name that Jews give it is the Tanakh. And in it, we find language that has literally shaped the Western imagination, Western civilization. Soaring passages, prophetic passages, like Micah chapter 6, verse 8, which we heard Jeff speak to a moment ago. Transcendent wisdom from books like Job and Ecclesiastes. And all the stories, the story of Adam and Eve in the garden, the story of Noah and the flood, the story of the Exodus from Egypt, the story of Moses delivering the 10 Commandments, the story of David and Goliath, all the stories, story after story. That's the first major scripture of Judaism. Its second is called the Talmud, and this consists of no less than 63 volumes of Jewish wisdom teachings and tales edited over 1,800 years ago and continuously added to over the centuries. Put the Tanakh and the Talmud together, and the result is what Judaism calls the Torah, a word which means teaching or guidance, and which brings to mind Hinduism's concept of dharma. It is from the Talmud that we receive today's wisdom story. The time is the 1st century during the Roman occupation of the land of Israel, and also when a certain rabbi named Yeshua, Jesus of Nazareth, lived and died. Around this same time, as the story goes, there was a man who was interested in converting to Judaism. This man went in search of the town wise man, who happened to be the Rabbi Shammai. And to Rabbi Shammai, he said, I would like to convert to Judaism and become a Jew, but I don't have much time. I know I have to learn the entire book that you call Torah, but you must teach it to me while I stand on one foot. Now, this story is going to teach us a whole lot about Judaism, but it also reminds us that the more things change, the more things stay the same. The man who went to talk to the rabbi wanted a sound bite. He wanted an elevator speech. He wanted an executive summary. Why did he feel so rushed? He could be someone who comes from our own day, compulsively checking his smartphone, needing to hurry to his next Zoom meeting in an afternoon full of Zoom meetings. The more things change, the more they stay the same. The man said, you must teach Torah to me while I stand on one foot. And that's a striking image, yeah? It's not a very stable position, unless you're a stork or a yogi. What is the story really trying to say about this man who wanted to convert to Judaism? And I'm going on about this because the Talmud is a subtle teacher, and much is between the lines. A rabbi from our time, Adin Steinsaltz, who is widely considered to be a genius, the first person in 1,000 years to single-handedly write a complete Talmud commentary, he says that, and I quote him, "We kiss the Talmud before studying it and after we finish it, but while we are studying it, we pound it." That's what he says. Needless to say, this is a religion that values scholarship. Judaism values scholarship. The life of the mind is a spiritual practice. Underlining is a spiritual practice. A Yiddish proverb says it like this: a table is not blessed if it has fed no scholars. You know, it has been said that America is infected by a hardy strain of anti-intellectualism. And too many people, too many Americans are proud of their ignorance, and they regard it as a virtue. So it comes as a breath of fresh air, at least to me, to encounter a religion that is so unapologetically intellectual, unabashedly intellectual. But back to the story. The man in search of a religion went to Rabbi Shammai, and fast forward, it did not go well. You see, Rabbi Shammai was a quick-tempered and impatient man. He was strict in his views, and to him, the soundbite approach to religion was outrageous and unacceptable. He knew that people can spend their entire lives studying Torah and never wrapping their minds around the entire thing. An entire lifetime is not enough, even that. And perhaps the most important part of this learning is not available through simply reading a book. When Moses received the written law on Mount Sinai, it is said that alongside the written revelation was an oral one, a one passed on through generations by speech, and meant to help to interpret the written law, passed on word of mouth, community wisdom. That's what I'm talking about, community wisdom. To plug in, you got to be a part of this community. Community, in fact, is the starting point and the purpose for this entire religion of Judaism. What was created at the foot of Mount Sinai after the exodus from Egypt was a holy people. And keeping these people on the straight and narrow is what the religion is all about. This is what Rabbi Shammai knew. So he pushed the man away. Pushed him, it is said, with a builder's yardstick. And this little detail of the story reminds us that the rabbi had a day job. He had a day job. He was a builder of homes. That is what the Rabbi Shammai did. But the man in search of a religion, God bless him, was persistent. He did not let Rabbi Shammai rain on his parade. And perhaps it's because he was so inspired by the things he'd already heard about Judaism. And of course, otherwise he would not have sought out Rabbi Shammai to begin with. We should not underestimate this man in search of a religion. Now, one of these things he had probably heard about had to do with the unique character of Judaism's God. Religion scholar Houston Smith, in our study text for this year, The World's Religions, says it well. He says, the Greeks, the Romans, the Syrians, and most of the other Mediterranean peoples would have said two things about their God's characters. First, they tend to be amoral, not interested in morality. Second, toward humankind, they are indifferent. They don't care. The Jews, however, reversed the thinking of their contemporaries on both of these counts. Whereas the gods of Olympus, the Greek gods, tirelessly pursued beautiful women, the God of Sinai watched over widows and orphans. while Mesopotamia's Anu and Canaan's El were pursuing their aloof ways. Yahweh speaks the name of Abraham, Yahweh being the name, one of the names of the Jewish God. Yahweh speaks the name of Abraham, lifting his people out of slavery. God, says Houston Smith, is a God of righteousness. So Judaism's conception of the divine was very different from that of its neighbors, and not just because of its monotheistic affirmation that God is one. God is also good. God is ethical. God cares. In the Tanakh, from the book Isaiah, chapter 58, we read this: "Is not this the fast that I choose, to loose the bonds of injustice, to undo the thongs of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, and to break every yoke? Is it not to share your bread with the hungry, and bring the homeless poor into your house? When you see the naked, to cover them, and not to hide yourself from your own kin? Then your light shall break forth like the dawn, and your healing shall spring up very quickly. Your vindicator shall go before you. The glory of the Lord shall be your rear guard." The man in search of a religion wanted to know more about this God, unlike any God he'd ever heard of before. So he did not allow the brush-off from Rabbi Shammai to rain on his parade. He persisted in his search. He continued his search process, which today we might call congregation shopping or church shopping. And he eventually found another rabbi, Rabbi Hillel, whose day job happened to be that of a woodcutter. And his experience with the Rabbi Hillel proved to be completely different. "Certainly," the rabbi said, when the man put forward his strange condition and said, "Teach me the essence of Judaism while I stand on one foot." To this the rabbi said, "Certainly." You should know that in the pages of the Talmud, this is not the only time in which Rabbi Shammai and Rabbi Hillel, the builder, and the woodcutter disagree. If we include not only their direct disagreements, but those between their followers, we end up with over 300 instances of disagreement, all of them recorded faithfully in the Talmud. It is, says religion writer Arthur Kurzweil, probably the only sacred document that objects to itself. Within the Talmud, you will read passages that object to the very point of view that it had just expressed a moment before. In other words, here is a religion that, like Unitarian Universalism, loves the questions and loves the disagreements, and does not envision religious identity as a matter of unanimity of belief. To be a Jew, you don't have to believe the same things. You don't even have to believe in God. You don't even have to believe in God. I'll say that again. To some people, says one Jewish humorist, I am an atheist. To God, I am the loyal opposition. Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz puts it like this: every person at some time has to recreate Sinai for themselves. We believe that the law has at least 600,000 different paths within it for people to enter. There is what is called the private gate for each of us, and each of us must find our own private gate into the law. Now again, how Unitarian Universalist is this insensibility, the need to recreate Sinai for oneself and to find one's private gate. Rabbi Steinsaltz also said this. He said the Talmud has kept us sane by showing us that there are contradictions in this world and that we cannot solve them. We must learn to live with them. Judaism's argument, in short, is that religious idea cannot possibly be a matter of everyone believing the same things, because the law is big. It's got so many paths to enter into. Also, people are different. And also, life contains contradictions that cannot be smoothed over. Only we learn how to live with them. Because Judaism accepts differences of belief, because Judaism embraces questions and arguments and disagreements, it proves its relevance to real life. Says religion scholar Stephen Prothero, what is required in Judaism is not to agree, but to engage. Listen to that again. What is required in Judaism is not to agree, but to engage. And I have a congregation of one person this morning, the beautiful Judy. Judy, will you say amen? Amen. There you go. And I hope you're saying amen too, wherever you happen to be. Amen. Thank you, Judy. I'm sorry I put you on the spot there. I'm just so excited to have someone here in the house. I'm just saying. Engagement is what we see on every page of the Talmud. People engaging questions and issues of every size from all sorts of perspectives. Rabbi Shammai's perspective was characteristically strict, concerned as he was about the Roman occupation of the lands of Israel and how to keep Judaism strong and intact in the face of Roman cultural influences. Rabbi Hillel, on the other hand, did not share his concern. And so he was more liberal in his views, more open to people like our man in search of a religion. Yet the views of both are considered equally inspired and worthy. Said the 16th century Jewish scholar Isaac Luria, not only are both the words of the house of Shammai and the house of Hillel enduring on the conceptual level, but each has its time and place on the pragmatic level as well. Each has its time and place, and we pound the Talmud to get clear about which of its teachings can best fit here and now in our circumstances. Liberal and conservative wings both belong. The first might speak better to some situations, the second might speak better to others. But back to the story. We're near the end. Rabbi Hillel has the man stand on one foot, and then he says, "Repeat after me. What is hateful to you, do not do that to someone else." That's all he says. It's a great answer, a great summation of Judaism for two reasons. First, it is in line with the God of Judaism's character, his ethical character. Be ethical because the God of Judaism is ethical. Second, it echoes Judaism's primary emphasis on practice, not to believe something necessarily, but to do something. Tikkun olam, repair of the world. That is a phrase I hope you take with you as you leave this place today. Tikkun olam. In the Talmud, we also read, "Do not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. Do justly now. Love mercy now. Walk humbly now. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it." As Unitarian Universalists, we are direct descendants of Judaism. Judaism is our grandparent faith. It means that this call to tikkun olam, the repair of the world, is part of our DNA. Social justice is part of our DNA. If spirituality is one side of the coin, tikkun olam, social justice, is the other side of the coin. Rabbi Hillel says to the man standing on one foot, and to you and to me, as his religious grandchildren, "Repeat after me. What is hateful to you, do not do that to someone else." So the man standing on one foot repeats it. And then what Rabbi Hillel says next, well, it's just super sneaky. He says, Rabbi Hillel says, that is the whole of the law. All the rest of the Torah, all the rest of the oral teaching is there to help explain this simple law. Now, go and learn the rest of the Torah so that it becomes a part of you. And that is how the story ends. And I hope you see how Rabbi Hillel has been sneaky. What he says is not so different at all from what Rabbi Shammai believes. For the golden rule, because that's what we're talking about, for the golden rule to truly become a part of you, you have got to give yourself to the larger community that supports that rule and gives it meaning and helps to interpret it in all the many situations of life. Sound bites and executive summaries, they don't go very far, and never far enough. It is true of Judaism, it is true of Unitarian Universalism, it is true of anything. Armchair quarterbacks, they will never know what it is like to be part of a real team and to know what it feels like to really play. To be a Unitarian Universalist truly, you have to belong to Unitarian Universalist community. Support that community. Live and lean into that community. You have to be connected. You have to be committed. Rabbi Hillel says to the man, go and learn so that Judaism becomes a part of you. And if that man follows the rabbi's advice, then part of what he will need to do and learn and practice is what is called the Halakhah of Judaism. And that's another bit of terminology to know. Halakhah. Halakhah refers to the rules of living which collectively make up the Jewish way of life. The Tao of Judaism, if you will. This Tao, or path of Halakhah, consists of basic ethical guidelines like you shall love your neighbor as yourself, as well as detailed laws concerning all aspects of life like land ownership, civil and criminal procedure, family law, dietary restrictions, and sacred observances like weekly Shabbat or Passover or the high holy days. Halakhah provides a rule for practically everything. 613 rules, in fact, found in both the Tanakh and the Talmud. Now, from the perspective of the man who just wanted a soundbite, this might sound over the top absurd. I ask you for one soundbite and you give me 613 rules? What kind of religion is this? Give me unanimity of belief any day over all these rules and constraints and spontaneity killers. Maybe that's what he might have said. But you know, I like what religious scholar Stephen Prothero says about this, how he illuminates the ultimate value of Jewish Halakhah. He relates a story about the last time he was in Jerusalem, and a Jewish friend was showing him around the city. On 2 different days, says Stephen Prothero, I offered to buy my friend ice cream. In each case, because of the dietary requirement not to mix meat and dairy, he had to recollect when he had last eaten meat, and his community's rule was a 3-hour wait. This, admits Stephen Prothero, may seem irrational, but for him, my offers appeared to engender Buddhist-style mindfulness, prompting him to be mindful of what he was thinking about eating and of what he had eaten in the past and when. More important, they prompted him to be mindful of God. In other words, halakhic living brings mindfulness to even the humblest activity. It is how a Jew finds the sacred in the everyday. Do that, and the spirit of the golden rule is never far away. Go and learn, says Rabbi Hillel to the man, and not just learn Halakhah, learn also the history. Let the history of the Jews solidify the full import of the golden rule, what's at stake, what it means. And if we do as the man does, if we do what we learn is that the golden rule and all the rest of the rules come in the form of a covenant with God, a promise to God. Scholars say it happened around 1200 before the Common Era, when Moses led the Israelites out of their brutal slavery in Egypt, out from underneath the heavy hand of Pharaoh, and then the miracle parting of the Red Sea. Moses then went to the top of Mount Sinai to receive God's commandments. And because he was gone for a while, the people turned anxious. And they turned back to their old religious ways. They created a golden calf, reminiscent of the old gods that were more familiar to them probably than the God of Moses. And they worshiped that golden calf. And I want to know if this part of religious history came to mind for you when you might have read about the recent Conservative Political Action Conference, and how there a literal golden statue of Donald Trump was featured. And the CPAC folks, the Conservative Political Action Conference folks, they seem to worship it and all the hatred it stands for, like the golden calf of old. Moses finally came down from the mountain bearing God's commandments, inscribed in stone. But when he took one look at how those folks were worshiping the golden calf, how they had been unfaithful, he threw those stone tablets down and they were smashed to smithereens. Did you know that? Where hatred and ignorance are concerned, I am sorry, there are just not two legitimate sides to the argument. There just aren't. There's just hatred and ignorance to heal. So Moses went back up to meet God again, came back down bearing a second version of the sacred tablets of the law. And by this time, the people had repented, and they were hungry for better guidance. Moses came down from that mountain. He communicated the Torah, the 10 laws, to the Israelite elders, and then he said to them and to all, "Wash your garments and be ready on the third day, for on that day God himself shall come down from Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people." And God did, in thunder and in lightning. On the morning of that third day, a thick cloud over that mountain, a trumpet blast that shook the Israelite camp and set everyone to trembling. And there was God. The people met God. And God said, "You have seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now therefore, if you obey my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be my treasured possession out of all the peoples. Indeed, the whole earth is mine, but you shall be for me a priestly kingdom and a holy nation." In short, uphold the Torah and all its commandments, and God will preserve the Jewish people and make them prosper, preserve them upon the face of the earth. That is the promising, that is the covenant. At least one side of it. On the other side, the implied shadow side, is that should the Israelites fail to uphold the covenant, fail to uphold Torah, break faith with God, destruction shall come down upon them, swift and deadly. And it turns out that the main storyline of Judaism is, number one, covenant, number two, violation of covenant and exile, and then number three, return. We see this storyline played out again and again over the course of the history of the Hebrew people. It is not easy being a chosen people. Thus, around 500 years after the Exodus event, after such faithful leaders as Saul, David, and Solomon, the kingdom of Israel entered bad times. Bad leadership split the kingdom into northern and southern halves. And into this moment in history stepped a prophet like Amos, a prophet who saw the corruption, a prophet who said to the corrupt Jewish rulers, "Look, do you remember what life was like in Egypt? Do you remember how we were treated by Pharaoh, oppressed by Pharaoh, ground underneath the heel of Pharaoh? Well, congratulations. The way you rulers are running things, it's as if you had reestablished Egypt right here and now in our midst. You have become just as brutal as Pharaoh. The Torah says that we must treat the poor and the weak with dignity, but you have made them your slaves. You oppress them, you break their spirit, you kill them, and now that you have broken covenant with God, God will come down like a hammer. I wish to God that Amos could enter our Congress today in America and say important words that need to be said. The Jewish God is an ethical God. The Jewish God ensures that people will experience the consequences of their actions. And indeed, as the prophet Amos predicted, the retribution came. The cost of disobedience was destruction. The northern kingdom was destroyed in 722 before the Common Era. The southern kingdom was destroyed in 586 before the Common Era. Break the covenant with God and you are in trouble. God is a God of mercy, but also of justice. This is the fundamental storyline of Judaism. Covenant, violation of covenant and exile, and then return. All this, the way of Jewish Halakhah and the history of the Jews, is what the man searching for a religion must go and learn to make the golden rule a true part of him, as Rabbi Hillel had said. And the learning continues. The learning continues in the face, for example, of the Shoah, which is perhaps better known these days as the Holocaust. But again, for Jews, that is not an acceptable name for the murder of the 6 million Jews during World War II. The learning continues. It continues in the face of the Middle East crisis, where Israel and Palestine are locked in a state of mutual cruelty, crisis. The learning continues in the face of America's crisis of democracy and justice. The learning continues in the face of all the contradictions in our world that we cannot solve and must somehow learn to live with, to ameliorate as best as we can. The learning continues. To be a Jew is just as Rabbi Abraham Heschel once said, to remember that there is meaning beyond absurdity, to be sure that every deed counts, that every word has power, and that we all can do our share to redeem the world in spite of all absurdities and all frustrations and all disappointments. And above all, to remember to build a life, as if it were a work of art. The man in search of religion balances on one leg to recite the golden rule, but unless he commits to the larger faith supporting this rule, it is as if he stays standing on that one leg, perpetually imbalanced, perpetually unsteady. The message is to us all. Only when he does commit does he stand on both legs, stands firm, solid ground. To only half like something or like it from afar is half-baked. What is required in religion is not to agree, but to fully engage. What is required is to belong to a religious community and to be connected and committed. What is required is to seek out experience of the sacred in the everyday. What is required is to do practical and concrete things which bring heaven to earth and illuminate the sacred in the everyday. What is required is to belong to a history and a people larger than your single solitary self, and to share in both the sorrows and the joys, in all the exiles and all the returns, forever in the pages of the Talmud. Rabbi Shammai and Rabbi Hillel disagree on so many things, but on this, what it truly means to be religious, the builder and the woodcutter, they agree, they are one. They are one. May we Unitarian Universalists, direct descendants of our grandparent tradition of Judaism, honor the wisdom of our grandparent and agree with Rabbi Shammai and Rabbi Hillel too, to be engaged. May it be so. And now our closing hymn, Blue Boat Home.
Still my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Sun, my sail, and moon, my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we can pilgrim souls, making our way by the lights of the heavens in our beautiful blue boat home. I give thanks to the waves upholding me, hail of the great winds surging beyond, breathe the infinite sea before me, sing us fly my sailor song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home.
Now bring your chalice close to extinguish it as I extinguish the chalice here. And say, we extinguish our flames, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry with us until we meet again. Remember coffee hour, which starts at 11:30. I will see you at the sermon chat at 12:30 on Zoom, and I'm also happy to say that I'll be spending some time with our coming of age students this afternoon, and we're going to talk about prayer. So I'm looking forward to that also. And now our benediction. Once again, one of the things we learn from Judaism is that what is required is not to agree, but to engage. So let us engage. Let us know. We are the ones we have been waiting for. We are not perfect, but we are perfectly fitted for this day. We are not without fault, but we can be honest as we face our past and as we chart a new future. We are the ones we have been waiting for. May we be bold and courageous to chart a new future. May we have faith in a future that is not yet known. We are the ones we have been waiting for. Be well, West Shore. Love, courage, and cheer to you.